Okay, so just continuing on. Now that we've added some cubes here, and I did that very, very quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that all. So if I go on the right hand side, I can select all the cubes and hit delete, and you'll just disappear. Now, one thing that I think that is very, very useful is to know that you can do incremental saves. So if you hit Control Alt S, it will just basically increment a number on top of the naming convention that you already provided, and that way you can go back to an earlier point in time if you get stuck, or if you make mistakes, or what have you, or if you just want to go back in time for some reason or any reason, you can just go back by making sure that you've got incremental saves all along the way. So a very, very powerful thing. I use incremental saves all the time. So now that we've introduced the viewport, we introduced the navigation capabilities, so rotating around, panning left and right, zooming in and out. Now let's just add some primitives. So the primitives are located here on the right hand side. So go ahead and click the cube. You can do any primitive that you want. So if we want to add a plane, and there's a plane, and let's say for example we want to increase the size of the plane, we can do that using the coordinates. So the attributes, make sure the plane is selected, go down to coordinates, and now you can increase the size, or so the size of the plane by moving the S. S stands for scale, so you can scale it out and push it out. Now, being a plane, it's not going to scale on the y-axis, so this is completely redundant. So you can just leave that as 0. Don't like it, just go back to tools and reset transform, and you're going to come back to what it was before. Another way to scale is by dragging these yellow dots. So if you highlight the yellow dot, just move it out. That's another way of doing a scale or a scaling. So that's very important. So what we're going to do is we just add this plane. What I'm going to do now is add a primitive. The way you do that is just simply go here to the primitive again and just add a cube. So the cube's right here. It is located inside the plane. So if I just Alt and left mouse button, you can see that it's kind of half-half. It's half up, half down. So what we want to do is basically lift it up and place it on the plane itself. Now, a way to do that is by going over here on the left hand side to make sure that it actually coincides with the plane, is by clicking this button here, and now the hitting place, right, it's going to give you this particular view here. So now as I move it around, it moves it on the plane, so it's no longer disappearing underneath, it's actually on the plane itself. So if you scroll your eyes to the right hand side, you can see here that it's telling you, okay, well, you want to do it or move the object and the y-axis is up, so it's up there, and you want to basically move it around, and the offset is 0, 0. So if you want, and you want to sort of drag in a little bit deeper, you can drop it down. So therefore it's deeper inside the actual y-axis. So what I'm going to do is just move it around. So just move to the middle of the plane. So now you can basically move objects all around on the plane. So if I go ahead and add another cube, so I'm going to just do another cube here. Okay, I'm going to make it smaller, and now what I want to do is I want to drag this cube on top of the surface of my other cube. Very easy. Just go over here to the place tool. I'm going to drag it, and now you can see that it's dragging itself all across the surface of the other cube. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? But notice how it's offsetted a little bit. So what I need to do is remove the offset. So I'm going to go 0. So now as I move it around, there is no offset. So if you want to offset it, or like if you're placing plants on a field or anything like that, you don't want it to be perfectly aligned with the actual field itself, because the plant has roots. You can basically offset it a little bit, and what's going to happen from then on, it's going to basically move it around with a little bit of offset there. So for now, let's go 0. Okay, so I'm just going to offset this, and I'm going to place it here. You can add more objects. I'll grab a sphere, for example, and I'll increase the size of the sphere, and I'll move it a little bit. So I'm clicking the move buttons or the operations here on the left hand side, and again, same thing. I don't like it to be dug into the actual object, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the sphere, and I'm going to go and hit the place button here on the left hand side. Now it's moving on top of all my objects. You can see here, I'm going to place it right here on top of the big cube, and I'm going to reduce the size. So if I go and hit sphere and go to the object, I can reduce the radius of the object. Now it's basically reduced it in respect of the object itself. So what I want to do is push it down and just grab it and place it anywhere I wish. So now I've got perfect placement, and the sphere is on the cube as well. Fantastic. Now, next thing to introduce is, as we're adding these primitives, we are also adding this tree structure here on the right hand side. As you can see, all of it is green buttons. Now, if I go ahead and click that, right, it removes the object from the screen, so I don't see it anymore. And as you can see here, you can do that as you see fit. So if you're working on an object and you want to isolate it, you can simply just left mouse button and just drag down, and you'll just remove everything, or left mouse button drag up, you'll highlight everything back again. So you can do it in that way. So instead of clicking one by one, you can just drag the left mouse button up and down, and you'll basically do the same thing. You do have these LED lights as well. So if you do that, what it's going to do, it's going to remove it from the viewport, but it's still going to render it, right? So this is the rendering, right? So if you do both reds, that means it's not going to be invisible in the viewport, and it's not going to be visible in the render. So let's just undo that. So those are ways that you can change your visibility and your objects or primitive or geometry inclusion or exclusion from the renderer and from the viewport. Okay, so now that's very, very simple, but the thing is, how can you manipulate this sphere or this cube, right, other than moving it back and around? But what if I want to change things on it? Now, if you look at the actual cube itself, let's have a look at that a little bit closer. You're going to see here that it only has one segment. So therefore, what if I increase the segments? What that means is you should see the edges, two more edges being applied on the X and Y axis. Now I can't see them. The reason why is because I'm not in the viewport to allow me to see that. So if I hold the N key, now I've got different options of view. Now if you hold N key and move the left mouse button or move the mouse at all, it's going to disappear. So if you go ahead and click N, now if you hit B, you're going to see all the edges that make that geometry up. You can see all the edges and the viewpoints. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to add more edges, more segments. So if I go ahead and drag this, I'm adding more segments, more geometry to my primitive. That means I can do more with it. I can add, manipulate these polygons and these edges and these points. Now you can't do anything to this object unless it's editable. Now the way you're going to make it editable is by going to this button here, and you're going to click it or hit C. Now it's editable. Now also notice that the cube has changed from this view where my mouse button is. You can see or the cursor, sorry. The cube is not a cube anymore. It's this object. That means it's an editable or it's an editable object geometry. So now that enables these modes. So this is, if I go ahead and click that while I've got the cube selected, now you can see the points. So if I grab any point, I can move that point around. And now if I go to edge, I can grab any edge and move that edge around. If I grab that one there, which is a polygon, I can grab a polygon. Let me grab that one, for example, and move that polygon around. So you can see that you can now start deforming the primitive and the object however you wish. Okay, and the way you achieve that is to make sure that you hit the editable button here on the right hand side where my cursor is, or hit C, and that will change the cube into an editable geometry. So now from here I can do a lot of things. Some of them I can actually say, if I want to add more edges to this particular geometry, I can do that by going over here on the left hand side and looking for the knife or the line cut icon. Now if you don't have that, you might end up having the loop path cut icon, which is the same. So go ahead and click the loop path, and now what I can do is I can add more edges to my geometry. So now on the right hand side, as soon as I did that, you saw here number of cuts. So I can increase that geometry. So it's going to find between the original geometries, it's going to start adding more lines in proportion of the gap between the original edge, top edge and bottom edge. So there you go. So you can now increase the number of different edges between the top one and the bottom one. So we can add edges on the side, we can add edges to the top. So I'll just go ahead and do that one there, and let's add more edges. Now another cool tool is the symmetry cut. So if I go ahead and keep symmetry cut, what it's going to do is going to cut it in a symmetrical way. Between this edge and that edge, it's going to find the optimal symmetry. So that way I don't have to cut it down the bottom and the top. It's just going to give me a nice symmetry, and it's usually only 2. So it's only 2 cuts for symmetry. So if I untick symmetry, I can just add as many cuts as I want. I just add the first cut, say from here, there, and then I can just increase the cut numbers, etc. So that way I can add more geometry and manipulate each and every one of these polygons as I'm going through. So now that I've added more edges, that means I've added more polygons. Now what I can do is just going to go to the polygon mode, go to the brush. Now if every time you want to get out of a mode, you can just hit 9. Now that's when we're going to bring up the brush. So now I've got the ability to manipulate or change the polygons. Notice how my selection circle is pretty wide, and I'm selecting 2 at a time. I don't want to do that. I want to select 1. You can change that by going here on the right hand side and changing the size. You can do that by using the middle mouse button and scrolling by pointing outwards, but it's much easier to just go here and just change the size. So now my little circle where my cursor is smaller, so I can select an individual polygon and just move it out. Now to extrude without bringing in the other edges, you just simply highlight the polygon, hold the control key, find the axis you want to drag it in, and just pull it out. Now if you don't want to go down axis but you want to go down a certain plane, you can do the same thing. Just highlight the plane in between. So basically the red and the blue, if I highlight the green bit in here and hold the control, I can now drag it in these axes, so it doesn't have to be controlled by the plane or the X and Y axis. I can now move it around however I wish. Okay, so that's one way to be able to sort of manipulate your objects. Again, holding the control key and selecting a polygon, right, like I've done here. Hold the control key, I can just extrude outwards, upwards, or sideways. If I don't hold the control key and I do the same thing, I start moving the edges around that polygon at the same time. So that's very, very key and very important to note. So that's how you go ahead and do some extrusions, how you divide and subdivide, how you select various geometry attributes such as edges, points, and polygons. Now another very, very strong, very powerful tool is the bevel. So if I go ahead and go to my edge here and go ahead and hover over the bevel icon, which is M and S on your keyboard, right? Now because I've already got this edge selected, I can then left mouse button click in any location and just drag it out or inwards. So now what that's doing is creating a bevel. Now notice that the bevel has only 0 subdivisions. So if I go ahead and do a Control Z and I increase the subdivisions, say to 4, now if I do the same thing, that's going to add 4 lines and make it much, much smoother. So that's what you're going to get if you use the bevel. So that gives you that nice curved look around the edges. So the more subdivisions you place, the better the outcome is, and you can basically add more curvature as you add more subdivisions using the bevel. So folks, that's it. That's the basics or the foundations. Again, this course isn't about a comprehensive basic introduction of all the aspects of CINEMA4D, but I'm just highlighting some things that you will need for this course as you're going through the lectures and the individual lessons, you will come across some of these things that I just mentioned. So just to basically summarize everything, all your primitives are on the right hand side. They all get stacked in a tree structure. To view them with the edges, etc., you can hold the N button and click B for the lines, or A to remove the lines. So I'm going to hit A now. So that's how it looks without the lines. And I'm going to hit B. Now that's how it looks with the lines. Okay, so you can sort of toggle between those two options and you'll be able to see all the geometry the way you need to see it.